I saw her. Wow.
Sorry, one meeting to the next. Good afternoon, everybody.
Hi. Okay. Good evening and welcome to the Civil Service Board meeting of Monday, January 26, 2015. The time is 5:20. Please, everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Secretary, please call the roll of the board.
John Franchione. Livingston Ritchie.
Present.
Mimi Willis. Fortuna Smuckler.
Present.
Linda Carver. Present. Helen Phillips.
Present.
Any member of the public who will speak here tonight must give their name and address for the record and must be sworn in. If you're going to speak, please stand up and raise your right hand.
That would include all employees seeking outside employment, so if that's you, please stand.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please say, I do. Okay, thank you. The first business in order is approval of previous minutes for October 27, 2014. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
I make a motion.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
Any discussion, corrections, or amendments?
Just to be clear, there was a first set of minutes that went out. The amended minutes went out, so that's the one that we're approving today.
Okay. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. And we'll wait for Ms. Willis to sit down. Oh, no problem. No rush. I'd like to add that Ms. Willis has come in. The next business in order under new business is request for outside employment for Rold Jacques. Jacques. Okay. Is he here? Please come up and state your name and address for the record.
I think so. Test it.
Your name and address for the record.
Okay, good evening, everybody. My name is Ward Jacques. Address is 7973 Shalimar Street, Miramar, Florida, 33003.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve outside employment?
I do.
Okay, any discussion?
I just have a statement to Mr. Rowe. Mr. Jock Rowe. Represent NMB. That's all I want to say.
Okay, represent NMB. Any further questions or discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Good luck. Our next business in order under new business is request for outside employment for Merlin Jones. Please come up and state your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon, everyone. Merlin Jones, 1825 Northeast 169th Street.
Do I hear a motion to approve outside employment for Merlin Jones?
I approve.
Okay, any questions or discussion?
Through you, Madam Chair, I do have a couple of quick questions.
Okay.
Let's see here. What subject will you be teaching?
I teach writing, ESOL, English to speakers of languages, college writing. Depends what classes they have available, but it's all under writing.
Okay. Will any of your teaching involve teaching about experiences at the city or anything about in terms of procedures at the city?
No.
Okay.
I have a question, Madam Chair.
Mhm.
Effective date, December 2002. Was that when you started?
Yes, ma'am.
And you said ending date, present.
I meant until present, I'm doing this job. I've been doing this job until present. It was kind of tricky. I didn't know how to.
But
It's 3 weeks. I've been working here for 3 weeks.
Okay.
Okay, so you
Okay,
started
that
working with the
explains
city
it.
3
Okay.
weeks ago.
Okay. all right,
Okay.
I
Okay, that's
understand
good
now.
to clarify for the record.
Yeah.
And then the ending date would not be
We would not be
present, it would be indefinite.
Yeah, or ongoing.
Yeah.
But since
Yeah.
I haven't had permission, I didn't know if I could put it there.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
Actually, we'll go with ongoing. I like
Okay.
ongoing.
Any discussion or question? Okay. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Good luck.
Welcome
I'm
to the
sorry.
city.
Who made the motion? Who second? I did not hear that.
Richie made the motion, Carver seconded.
That was for her as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Our next business in order under new business is request for outside employment for Alan Perrin. Please come up and state your name and address for the record.
I am Alan Perrin, I stay 17381 Northwest 2nd Avenue, Unit 102, Miami, Florida, 33169.
Do I hear a motion to approve outside employment for Alan Perrin?
I approve.
I second.
Okay. Any questions or discussion?
Through you, Madam Chair.
Yes. Mhm.
For your employment, I'm assuming you're going to have insurance with the county? It's part-time? Well, no, not health insurance, driving insurance while you're working with them. You're going to be working as a driver, right? Okay. And what are your duties here at the city? Okay, so not driving here. Okay. I just wanted to make sure that was clear for the record. You were going to say something? That's not your primary duty. Got it. But your primary duty with the county will be driving. Okay.
Okay. Any further questions? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Good luck. Okay, I've been told that request for outside employment for Lavette Stevens has been taken off. So our next business in order under old business is our policies, procedures for outside employment request.
Hi, good evening. With permission, I'd like to kick off the discussion in this area.
Please.
Okay, so your board packets include the amendment to the Civil Service Board rule on outside employment. It's one page, looks like one paragraph, looks like this. And that really breaks down what the procedure is. First, an employee will ask their department head, their supervisor, for permission to perform outside employment. Then they're given either a preliminary approval from the department head, or the department head may deny it. If it's approved, then it would come before this body for an administrative approval. So they'd be allowed to start working, and then it's coming here, as you just saw. And I think the discussion has been, well, is that necessary? So can we streamline the process and use this board, this body, for the higher purpose of hearing appeals if there is a denial that somebody does not appreciate. So we still go up through the chain of command so that the city manager has the ability to manage the operations. The department head is in the best position to understand what interruption to their department may be presented. So they would provide approval. So what has taken place behind the scenes since your last meeting is we took a look at the policy. We took a look at the form, discussed with the with the board's attorney, and sought to, as I said, streamline the process. So we thought we would present to you the outcome of those discussions today.
Go ahead.
So the outcome is the department director, when I say department director, per Civil Service Board rules, Department of Personnel director, is in agreement with the suggestion. And we've met and we've revised the city's internal policies and procedures in terms of how that approval process takes place. And I think she's distributing a form. The new updated form. So if you want to take a look at the sample forms that you just approved, that will show you the old form. If you look at this new form, which is available and I guess will be eventually uploaded on Inside NMB.
Yeah, with approval. Now, if you notice that the just shifting gears back to the policy, the rule that's in place now, the rule actually says all city employees covered under the rules must adhere to the city's policy on conflicts of interest. Prior to accepting any off-duty employment, they must inform their department head about that type. The department head will then approve the request, inform the employee, and forward the approved request to HR for inclusion in the next board meeting's agenda. So this is a rule, and the old form supports the rule, the language of the rule. So if we're going to change the language of the rule, we need to, go through that formal process. That we would, you'd have to craft the proposed amendment and present it to City Council for approval. So we can't just change the form and throw it up on Inside MB. But what we could do is, just what we wanted to do today is talk about the recommended change, which would essentially just have department head, here's the request. If the department head says yes, then it's going to go through further administrative approval outside of your scope. That would include a step where any potential conflict of interest would be reviewed by the city attorney's office and then go to the city manager's office for final approval. So we're making sure at the same time that we are doing the best to protect the organization and by extension, the citizens. Okay. So it would still retain, in keeping with the existing rule, the ability of the board to hear any appeals of any denials. So if a denial happens, then an employee has this as the recourse.
Okay. I actually have proposed language to amend the pertinent rule, which is 2.05.07, the rule governing outside employment. If it's the board's will and you guys go in that direction, I have the proposed language ready, and we can prepare a appropriate legislation to bring to the council for their ultimate approval. The form that Ms. Amberson just passed out is more just for your information. That would be something that would be governed by the internal policies and procedures of the City Human Resources Department. But if you look, it lays out just general information that the employee should know that I believe reflect the board's expressed desire.
All right, I like the form, and I'd like to hear your language.
Okay. So if you pull out in your package the version from June 24th, 1996, it looks like this. Okay. So you can follow along with me with the proposed correction. You're ready, Madam Secretary? All right. There's the first sentence. We're going to skip that, go to the third sentence that begins with the department head will. Okay? So where it says Human Resources Department, after department, we're going to strike 4 all the way to the end of the agenda and replace that with further processing. So that sentence would now read, the department head will then approve the request, comma, inform the employee and forward the approved request to the Human Resources Department for further processing.
Then we're gonna strike out inclusion.
Yes, so right after 4, that's what you're going to strike out and replace it with further processing. So that's the first change. The next sentence will read, until such time as the, and then after the, we're going to strike out board meets to consider the request and replace that with employee receives final approval, comma. Okay, and then it's going to continue on. And then it says the employee may, after may, we're going to insert the word not. So the full sentence, oh wait, there's more changes to that sentence. No, that's it for that sentence. So the full sentence will read, until such time as the employee receives final approval, the employee may not accept the outside employment requested. So that negates the current structure where it's like they come to us after the fact. That's something that the city administration would like to look at beforehand, especially if there are any potential conflicts of interest, because after the fact doesn't really help. We'd like to take it and be a little bit more proactive about that. Moving on to the next sentence that begins with if the department head. So the addition will be after request, we're going to add a comma. If the department head disapproves the request, comma, it must be done in writing, blah, 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 blah. Department, let me just read it with the correction. If the department head disapproves the request, comma, it must be done in writing and a copy sent to the Human Resources Director for review. We're just going to strike out the word his. All right? Then we're going to move on to the second to last sentence, which starts with, if the Human Resources Director, actually no, second to last sentence, if the city manager denies the approval, we're going to insert a comma there. The employee may appeal the decision, and then after decision, we're going to insert the word to the board. And that's pretty much it. The only other insertion was a comma after denial in the sentence just before that. So that sentence would read, if the Human Resources Director concurs with the denial, comma, the employee may appeal the decision to the city manager. So when I put it in the proper format in the legislation, you'll see all the strike-throughs and such.
Do you mind reading it as a whole to us?
The whole thing? Okay,
Yeah.
sure.
It
Do you have a
would-
question before
Yes,
that?
I have questions with S. First and foremost, one that's seeking a part-time job trying to make ends meet, and they'll go through the process. The employee advantage they only have is to come to the board. The job will be gone by the time that decision comes, number one. And number two, we always getting cancellations when this board's supposed to meet. So these people don't wait for you when you have an opportunity to try to get the job. So the language in here and the process, it's kind of, to me, it's anybody understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand. What he's saying is that if he's denied by a department head and he or she can't start another job and has to wait another month to hear from us, and let's say we approve it, but it might be too late for...
That time constraint is the same thing that's going on right now.
Right, but I think he doesn't want to add to, he doesn't want to...
Well, we're not adding to it right now. In fact, what we've done, if we've taken out that step, right now, how it works is they have to get approval from the city administration and the Civil Service Board before they can even consider outside employment, supposedly, right?
No, excuse
ahead.
me, pardon the interruption.
Please.
At present, they're allowed to accept the job. They're allowed to work until such time as, well, if the department head, if the department head right now, as under the existing rule, if the department head says no, then they have the appeal process. If the department head says yes, they're allowed to work until they are, heard here. But at present, with this rule, if they are told no by their department head, then they have to go through the same appeal process. The appeal process really isn't changing. So, if you look at what is the actual number of appeals that we've heard in this area, we haven't had any in a couple of years. So beyond that, I mean, it's seldom, at best. So sometimes the Civil Service Board meeting has been delayed or postponed, but whenever there has been a time-sensitive matter, we have, been sure to let the board know that, and the board has been certain to meet. If that
Right.
helps.
My question is, when you say time sensitive with respect to you, Madam Director, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I'm trying to understand how do you streamline this to advantage be towards the person who's seeking employment, because there are times, and I've said on this board, to where they really needed this extra income. I mean, it was like dire straits. So my question would be that, well, let me just let her read the whole thing entirely. Maybe I get a better understanding. Then I can formulate my questions.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right. So the revised version would read, all city employees covered on, well, do you want me to just start from where it changes or just?
From the beginning.
Okay. All city employees covered under the rules must adhere to the city's policy on conflict of interest. Prior to accepting any off-duty employment position, an employee must inform his/her department head about type of outside employment being considered and the expected work hours. The department head will then approve the request, inform the employee, and forward the approved request to the Human Resources Department for further processing. Until such time as the employee receives final approval, the employee may not accept outside employment requested. In fact, let me take out requested. Okay, got that additional change? If the department head disapproves the request, it must be done in writing and a copy sent to the Human Resources Director for review. The employee who is denied off-duty employment by his or her department head may appeal this decision to the Human Resources Director. If the Human Resources Director concurs with the denial, the employee may appeal the decision to the city manager. If the city manager denies the approval or denies approval, the employee may appeal the decision to the board. The board's decision is final. So that's how it reads in its entirety.
Okay, do you understand it better, or?
Yeah, I understand. We really have never exercised that process. It didn't never go that far, but I'll get a lot better since she put in the
Right. I mean,
dot your I's and
if
cross
there's a
your T's.
department head that is not approving it, it's something we probably shouldn't be approving either. So, because they know the employee better, and they know the job that the employee is doing. So,
I understand.
any more questions?
I mean, and just to address that point, sometimes if speaking in hypotheticals, if there was an odd situation where the supervisor did not have a justified reason that they would state in writing as to why they were denying the outside employment request, that's something that would be filtered first through HR so they could evaluate it independently. And if you look at the new form, there's also a step for the city attorney's office to review it. So the city attorney's office ideally would head off any unjustified issues at the pass. So, I mean, there's going to be lots of review before it gets to you, if you get to the point of a denial. As Ms. Emerson stated, I personally haven't seen a denial since I've been here, and it's been quite a few years since then. But this preserves the board's role as an appellate body in case something just really unusual is going on. Okay?
I also like, can I
Please.
make a statement?
I'm looking at the new form,
Mm-hmm.
and I like the idea where it says, does the employer do business with the city of North Miami Beach? That wasn't ever mentioned at any of the places that they've,
It wasn't there before.
good.
Our office added it.
yeah, I think that's good.
Okay. Any questions?
No, I'm satisfied. I'm all right, Madam Chair.
I have a question.
Phyllis?
The request must go through all of these departments, all of these hands before the person can become employed.
Yes, ma'am.
What's the time frame on that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That I don't know.
because just like the gentleman said, if this takes days or even a week, by the time the person gets approval, the job may be gone.
I think you guys need to set a time frame on this approval, because it could just be sitting on somebody's desk.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I think that's something that
Well, excuse me if I may. At present, that turnaround time varies a lot because there is no extreme urgency such as you're talking about because they were allowed to start working upon approval by the department head. So if it took, a month or two, then it wasn't a big deal. We haven't had any conflicts of interest presented because we have a clearly articulated policy on conflicts of interest, and they're required to look at this, and we haven't had any appeals. So it's been running smoothly. It doesn't mean we can't improve it and do better, but the turnaround time has not been measured because it hasn't been an issue.
right.
But the employee was working during that time.
Exactly.
Can I
That's
make-
why why it it hasn't hasn't been been an issue.
That's
Can
why
I
it
make a
hasn't been an
request?
issue.
Yeah.
Can we take it out where it said they may not, once it's been approved by the department head or the supervisor, that they can start the job pending the approval of all the other ones?
Then that would remove that concern or
Right, so
delay
they
that
could,
concern.
they could in fact start it, a temporary start, sort of like a probationary start,
Preliminary approval.
Right.
Right.
based on the approval of the following departments. Did they do that? And then when the final one, it just takes off that restriction when it gets
Okay.
the final approval.
Well, I will say this. I know one concern that was expressed by the city attorney, which is why we added that additional layer and sticking the city attorney in that process, is to just really evaluate it for conflict of interest. We have a clearly articulated policy, as was stated, but the county has specific requirements that municipal employees should meet, and we just want to make sure that in addition to the city's policies and procedures regarding conflict of interest, those two are also addressed to make sure that we go deeper, just in case that's something that's not evident on the face of these requests. So,
Exactly, but still, they could still be working because it could take months. And
I don't know that it would take months.
This is actually a contract if you sign your name, if I looking at this or understand this right. But if that's here that you're saying that there's not going to be a conflict of interest, however, they may not know it. The people who are actually the employee who's trying to get that job, they may not realize it unless you do delve deeper. So, without their knowledge, they're signing it in full belief that they're doing the right thing and trustworthy. However, again, I make a request that they take out the
not.
not and allow them to work once they get approval from their supervisor, and with the clause that it is going to be investigated, and then they can get the final clause. Because if it's outside employment, they want to hold on to it, I'm sure.
Okay.
And if they don't, if they find out that it is, without their knowledge, is a conflict of interest, or there is a problem,
Okay.
they can
Well, here's
take
a
it
different
out.
question.
If my my memory serves me correctly, when this existing rule, which allowed folks to start working until they received, final review here. In other words, they could start working as soon as the department head said yes. That was prior to the existing county code coming into play, and that existing county code today now states that permission needs to be obtained before they start working.
It does.
By whom? By whom?
By the county.
Oh,
No,
For
but-
by
county
the
employees,
department.
it's by the
Right,
county.
she's right, by the department head.
But by the
By the
department head in
department
all instances. So it needs to be approved beforehand. If you're a county employee, it needs to be approved by your department head beforehand if you're a county employee. For municipal employees, we just need to make sure that it also meets those requirements that previously weren't taken into consideration in our policies and
Well,
procedures.
and I think that requirement, they have to get approval, and the county code says from their department head. So if we have them give preliminary approval from the department head, it may suffice to satisfy the county requirements.
I think to address the underlying issue that I believe the city attorney was trying to identify, or address rather, we can build in the city attorney's review with the department head to make sure there's no conflict of interest before the department head gives the approval. That's one way to address it without holding that step up.
But could there be a time frame on that it has to be done within
If I may,
72 hours or something like that?
if I may, Madam Attorney, with
Or
respect to
the
my,
chair.
with
Yeah.
respect to Chip, I just had something just came through my mind that if the employee have to go through this process because they was rejected by the department head, the employee probably come back and say, "Don't bother, the other job is gone," because everybody don't want to say it. But we're not expediting this. This is a lengthy process for them to come back before the board to get final approval. Although the department head has, to be totally honest, has not been saying, "No, you can't work." We appreciate that because we have identified the fact that we don't even have record of department head saying no. But for some uncertain reason, the department head decides to get chronicle and say, for an unapparent reason, you know what? I really don't like this guy. I'm not going to approve of it. Then we start a process. But you know what? You had a point when you say, how do we just take this and expedite it? Because now that's just the fact that he said no, and he's got to meet with the department head of the human resource. We still talking a time, and you and I both know the jobs don't wait for you. The job don't need you. You need the job. So that's just my argument.
On the other hand, before the department head had to approve it before he could get the job. So either way, if he said no, he
He still
can't
had
get
to
the
wait.
job. He's going to have to let that job go. If the department head said no
What?
from the get-go,
Mhm.
and okay, he wants to pursue it further, but as it stands now, if the department head said no, it ends there. Or he can take it further, and it's still going to take all that time.
I'm not sure if I really understood when you say if the department head say no, because when you look at that department head saying no, you can't get that job, but it should something been in place prior that you can go higher, because the department head can be biased. I mean, we're not looking at this from our perspective.
And it can. He has to put it in writing, and then
Right. The procedure is in place right now for appeals, and that procedure hasn't really changed. The only difference right now is that they can't start working, or one of the differences is that they can't start working with that outside employment until the final approval is done. I think a 2 business day turnaround is reasonable so long as the employee is available to answer questions, because really it's just a matter of check both for the city and for the employee,
Right.
so that neither side gets in trouble for any potential conflicts of interest.
I like that.
So I think having that step so that you take care of the issue beforehand, not after the fact, creates not even just a sense of urgency, but a positive incentive for people to do it and follow through with the procedure and not just make it a perfunctory thing that we do. But that's totally up to the board. That's a policy decision. The city attorney's office can address the conflict of interest issues either on the front end or the back end. I think it would be more prudent to address it before than after. And I think 2 business days is a reasonable turnaround time for most jobs. But again, entirely up to the board.
That sounds interesting.
as long as they know that there is a time limit, that it's not just going to be waiting and waiting and waiting.
Right. Now, when I say this, 2 business day turnaround, like bring it to whoever in the city attorney's office. I believe right now that review is probably going to be conducted by the city attorney himself or whoever he designates, but it's probably going to be conducted by him. So in those instances, he'll know that it's a top priority, but that would behoove the department head to let us know about this, either concurrently while the department head is considering it, so that the city attorney's office can also look at it at the same time. The city attorney's office preferred not to even entertain the request unless and until the department head approved, because if they didn't approve, then why should they even get involved? So,
Yeah, I have a concern about creating an organizational promise, an administrative promise to deliver, and if that promise to deliver within 72 hours isn't met, or 48 hours isn't met, what kind of liability are we presenting for the organization?
well, it wouldn't be presented in terms of a hard deadline. It wouldn't be built into the rules, but an aspirational deadline of 2 business days, as a reasonable aspiration of when the city attorney's office would be able. And I can't speak for all
Well, with
the
that caveat,
departments.
I'm satisfied. I just wouldn't want to bake that into a rule.
Right.
That would be administratively. So, yeah,
So it
we
won't
want to
be a
have some
rule,
sense of
it'll
urgency.
just be a given.
Say that one more
It,
time.
it'll be a given that it's 2 days.
An aspirational, so not given. Given means it's given.
Black and white.
It's not going to be
Right.
hardwired into the civil service
Right.
rule, but administratively, we will,
The target
aspire to
turnaround
that.
time would be 2 business days for the city attorney's office review. I'm not sure, because even before, the employee couldn't start working without the department head's approval,
That's
right?
correct.
So what was that normal turnaround time? I don't know if you even have that.
That's what I started the whole conversation with. Is I don't have that data. It wasn't
Okay.
measured because it wasn't, it was never an issue.
Right.
So we'll have to, what gets measured gets done. So we'll have
Right.
to start looking at that.
I guess one other way to address it might be when giving the form to the employee, letting them know if there's any time-sensitive deadline or something, to let us know that in advance, so that if there is, some kind of 1-week deadline or
Right.
24-hour deadline, that we know about it.
Well, and I
Um,
think that we need to, it's the statement that says you may not start working until all approval has been received. That's way down in the bottom of the file.
Right.
So we'll have to move that up to the forefront with an asterisk that says, let us know of time-sensitive issues, et cetera. So you and I can tweak the form.
Yeah.
But I think that's on the administrative side. What the civil service rule needs to state, as you know, and Madam Chair, is more the policy that we want, not the details of the procedure.
Correct.
Okay.
So the policy will be that the board will now serve an appellate role.
Correct.
Okay. All right, so you would prepare the language for the reso and we'll
Correct.
present it? Okay, terrific. You might-
Is that the board's, I guess,
Do we vote on this or?
I
Yeah,
think you should vote on
need
it,
to vote on
yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Before we vote, I have another question. Will the department heads be aware of the change in the policy and the sensitiveness of the time frame? Will somebody make
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
department
yes,
head
ma'am.
aware?
That's a great question, and absolutely, we would have to provide an update with training and make sure that not only the department heads know, but that all employees know and new hires. So we would hardwire that communication process into our administrative system.
So,
Good.
question, are we saying that they can work after the supervisor says no?
So the department head and the city attorney review the request, right?
Okay, yeah.
So that's what you're saying, okay. But they don't have to wait till it goes to all the other,
Well, there's just one more after.
Well, no, the other steps are just appeals. So the appeal steps, those would be there regardless,
okay.
regardless of what we were doing before. So if the department said no, then it would have been a non-starter from the start.
So we'll need to just work on the form a little bit
Right.
more, so it's a little clearer.
Let me take a look at the proposed.
It looks
change.
now, Ms. Joseph, like the city manager's approval is required.
Right.
Right.
And,
In resources.
we need to, yeah, and you don't have HR on here. So we'll just tweak the form, but it's to represent what the board's wish is. So this is an administrative form, so we'll make sure this reflects what the board decides to change.
Right, so do I hear a motion to change the outside employment request as discussed?
I'd like to make a motion to change the, because we're bringing it in line with what the county is presented, and that's a good thing.
I'll second it.
Okay. Do we have any questions or discussion on this? Okay. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you. We'll prepare the resolution and forward a copy to you, depending on what the outcome is with the mayor and council. One way or the other, we'll still forward to you and report back.
The board would like to recognize our liaison and Councilwoman Martell. Okay, the floor is open for discussion. Let the record reflect that no one has come forward. Our next scheduled meeting is Monday, February 23rd, 2015. Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Scott, for coming. So our next scheduled meeting is Monday, February 23rd, 2015 at 5:15. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
I second.
Those in favor? Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you and good night.
Thank you.
Yeah, but they were